If you don't think doing research prior to your cruise is important, I got a whole list of comments for you today that prove otherwise from people that clearly checked nothing before they booked that cruise. Good Saturday morning, everybody. Chris here with High Seas Cruising, and welcome to this week's episode of What Every Cruiser Wants. Though, really, this week it's going to be more what every cruiser didn't know before they booked that first cruise. And I think this is really, really important because we actually just started a new video series, A Beginner's Guide to Cruising, to help new cruisers avoid some of the pitfalls that we're going to read to you in today's comments or cruise reviews. There are more reviews, more complaints than they are comments about cruising, but I do think they really go to show how important research, reading, and understanding how cruises work before you actually book your first cruise. First up today, we're once again going to talk about gratuities. This seems to be one that gets people time and time again. And just like we talked about last week, this isn't about whether gratuities are right and wrong. This isn't about whether you should take them off, leave them on, pay in cash. This is about people who don't understand that gratuities are charged on board cruise ships. They don't understand how gratuities are charged. And even though this information is clearly listed on a cruise line's website, exactly how gratuities work, apparently there's some people out there that don't read them, and you end up with this. Royal Caribbean is by far the worst cruise line I have ever cruised with, and I've been on many. I recently went on one as a family trip, not my choice, and surprise, surprise, it's still terrible. Their service is bad. Food is blank, and they scam the blank out of their clients. Everything has an automatic 18% gratuity on it when you're charged. And you're automatically charged $18.50 a day per person for gratuity. Even when I opted not to do this, I like to take cash and do it myself because I do not trust these companies, I still got charged. But because they sent the invoice after the cruise is done, they refused to give me back the money. Still terrible. Will always be terrible. Do not sail with Royal Caribbean. Now, experienced cruisers all know that this isn't a Royal Caribbean specific situation at all. The majority of cruise lines, they have a service charge when you purchase something on board the ship. You go get a drink at the bar, there's a service charge. You go get spa services, eat in a specialty restaurant, there's going to be that 18 to 20% service charge. That's pretty normal across the cruising industry. So definitely not a Royal Caribbean problem. Now, when it comes to the standard daily gratuities, yeah, once again, the majority of the cruise lines do charge you a per day, per person amount for gratuities. You have the option to either prepay the gratuities before you get on the ship. If you don't do that, they're going to charge them to your shipboard account, which they're going to settle up for you before you get off that ship. Or you can go down to guest services at the end of your cruise and ask them to remove the gratuities. Now, one thing this comment doesn't specify is when she opted out, was that she thought she told them at some point, or checked a box at some point that she didn't want to pay gratuities, or did she actually go down to guest services and have them removed? Doesn't really specify that. I kind of take it like when she didn't select prepay that she assumed that meant she was opted out. I don't know that for sure though. But for someone to say, I've cruised on many cruises and I can't believe Royal Caribbean charges an 18% service charge, I can't believe they have a daily gratuity rate, kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit because, well, that's standard across the cruising industry for the most part. Shouldn't have been a surprise at all. Now, another thing new cruisers don't seem to ever pay attention to is the cruise contract. Written inside that cruise contract, it does say cruise lines have reserved the right to change the itinerary as they need to. And there are multiple things that can affect whether or not you get to go to a cruise port or not. Could be weather, Could be the situation in the cruise port, civil unrest like it is in this case. And while, yes, this can be extremely disappointing if you have to miss a cruise port, the cruise lines, they don't actually owe you anything if they make the change. They might give you a little compensation. They might give you a little bit of onboard credit, but they're not required to, and you definitely won't get it each and every time. But had you read ahead of time, had you done a little bit of research, you probably would have known that this could have happened. Really disappointed. I booked my cruise because of Labadee, Haiti, and Royal Caribbean canceled it without offering any refund or credit. Not even onboard credit. Feels like a bait and switch. All right, well, Labadee, Haiti was canceled due to safety concerns at that particular port stop. There was quite a bit of, civil unrest going on in Haiti. Still is in a lot of cases. And Royal Caribbean's been skipping Labadee. They've been skipping Haiti. This is done for the safety of the cruise passengers, safety of the crew, safety of the ship. Not to bait and switch anybody. This was a safety choice. And as much as it sucks, they don't owe you a refund. They don't owe you an onboard credit. It's nice when they offer it. It's nice when they provide it. But had you actually checked and known what you were booking when it comes to cruising, and this does happen probably more than you think it does based on what's going on in the world. How about final payment due date? Now, this is one that gets people sometimes. You book your cruise, you make your deposit, you're paying on it. The cruise line is going to tell you, it's going to give you the information that say final payment must be paid prior to this date. Depending on the cruise line, it's 60, 90, 120 days out from your sailing date, but they let you know this is the day you need to make your final payment. Now, they are not going to send you a text message that says, hey, your payment's due in a couple days, don't forget. They're not going to give you a phone call and let you know final payment's coming up, don't forget. The most you're going to get from the cruise line is an email reminder. But as the person booking the trip, the person paying for the trip, the person going on the trip, it is ultimately your responsibility to know when your final payment is due and make that payment prior to that date. Because if you don't make it, they're going to cancel your cruise. And if you call them and try to somehow blame it on them that they just didn't tell you, you're probably not going to get the cooperation you're hoping for. My family and I were looking forward to our first cruise and to go together. We picked our floor and room so we would be near one another. We made a non-refundable deposit because we knew we wouldn't be canceling. We paid for our drink packages and excursions and opened Royal Caribbean credit cards for the points. We downloaded the app to make things easier and assumed it would deduct the last payment from the cards on file. I went on the app and saw that it did not make the deduction, so I went to make the final payment and it wouldn't let me. I called and was told they canceled my reservation and already booked someone else in the room. They also kept my deposit since it was non-refundable. I asked to be rebooked, but they only had an upgraded room left, which would be about $10,000 more. I asked to be put on the waiting list, and they can only put you on for 3 days. In the 3 days, you have to check your email or try book online. They don't have the technology to send a notification for anything through text and can only email. I spoke to 2 different people asking why the app did not notify me as I put notifications on for the cancellations. The system they use doesn't work with the app, so you won't be notified, but you were not told that. The app doesn't show the cancellation and actually shows me still having the room I booked. They said they can't do anything and are unable to put anyone on a wait list for more than 3 days. They will keep the $700 deposit despite canceling my trip, doing nothing to help. Looks like we wasted our time getting Royal Caribbean cards and booking all of the details for the trip. They have no answer except that the system does not allow for better communications with the app or text. We are so disappointed and will not be trying our first cruise with this company. We booked directly, but will never do that without an agent again. Way too many rules, no accountability, and horrific company overall. So the short version of that very long comment is they booked their cruise, they were given their final payment due date, they downloaded the app, and at this point in time, assumed that the credit card information they put in the app for onboard expenses would somehow automatically deduct the final payment for them, and they would be good to go. That's not how cruising works. That's not how booking a cruise works. Final payment is completely separate. That is something you must physically go in and do. And again, they're not going to send you a text reminder. The app is not going to pop up and go, hey, your final payment is due tomorrow. That you get an email and you need to know and you need to remember. And if you don't make that final payment and you booked a non-refundable room, they're going to keep your deposit. That's how they work. Again, this is not a Royal Caribbean situation. This is a cruising situation. Because if you miss final payment on any of the cruise lines and you haven't made some kind of arrangement with them, they're going to cancel your cruise. And if you have a non-refundable deposit, they're going to keep that deposit. So had they paid attention to final due date, had they gone in and made sure that they made the payment for final due date, they wouldn't have been in this situation. There was a lot of assumption here. We assumed this would happen. We assumed that would happen. And when none of that stuff actually happened, you lost your cruise over it. And even if they go to another cruise line, if they go do the exact same thing again, they'll be in the exact same situation again. But the one smart thing they did say is next time they would use an agent, a travel agent. That's good, because at least a travel agent will help them to avoid some of these pitfalls that first-time cruisers make. And finally, one more for you today. Another pitfall that new cruisers will sometimes make is not having the proper travel documentation when they arrive to the cruise port. You got to check. You got to know, what do you need to get on board the ship? And if you book a cruise that requires you to have a passport and you show up at the cruise port without one, don't be surprised when the cruise line says, you're not getting on. I was told it's okay to travel without passports, and when we got there, me and my family were denied boarding. Kept my luggage inside the ship, I was never in, and took my personal stuff without authorization. After 2 hours waiting, they said they couldn't get the luggage. Now I'm missing one bag after I paid $160 to have it delivered. On top of that, I lost $4,000 of the cruise because they did not credit anything or refund any money. Customer service is clueless. There is a huge language barrier. Couldn't understand any of the customer service representatives. Overall, horrible experience. Almost seems like they do that on purpose to keep the money. My very first question would be, who said it was okay to travel without a passport? Did the cruise line say you don't need a passport for this cruise? Was it in their documentation, their website, their travel document requirements that said you don't need one? Or is this information you got from Bob down the street who said, don't worry, you don't need passports for cruising, you're good? Where exactly did that information come from? Because if you took somebody else's advice that said you don't need passports, you booked a cruise that required them, you show up at the cruise port without a passport, and now you are denied boarding, once again, that's all on you for not knowing what you needed before you got there. And in this case, they're not going to give you a credit. They're not going to give you a refund because you showed up without the proper documentation. That's on you. That's not on them. And to say it's almost like they do this on purpose. Because of course, yes. Yes, the cruise line made you not bring your passport. Why can't we blame it on them somehow? But it normally is like this. It's normally like this in comments and complaints from cruisers where something happens to them they don't like. It's never their responsibility. It's always somebody else's. And it clearly was done by the cruise lines on purpose. And that is going to be our video for this week for what every cruiser sometimes does wrong when they're first-time cruisers video. Yeah, that title's terrible, but we're going to go with it for today. Now, if you've enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you haven't done so yet, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It is free to do so. Helps our channel grow. Let you know anytime we put out a new video. Hope everyone out there is having a really great day, and like always, we will see you out on the high seas.